All right, we're live. This is Relatives Fight CPS. I'm attorney Vince Davis, and I'm joined by Georgette Truen, who is the moderator of the page. And tonight we have a very special guest, Carla Nelson, who is a grandparent who is trying to get, children out of CPS custody into her care. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Georgette, good evening.
Good evening.
Georgette, I understand you had some questions that you want to ask me. Before we get to them, I'm going to ask Carla to tell our audience who she is, what she's doing, why she's here. Carla, take it away.
Okay, so my grandkids are in the state of Virginia, and they were taken by CPS 17 months ago, and I've been trying to get them back ever since. Now, the social workers initially didn't really consider me at all, but I've been fighting this for 17 months, and we just ended with the circuit court termination of parental rights hearing, which ended my waiver petition.
That's unfortunate. Were you represented by an attorney in the CPS proceedings?
Well, originally, no, because the social worker led me to believe that it was just a matter of getting an ICPC and, getting that through. But the problem was that Tennessee made a mistake and put me as unsubstantiated abuse and neglect, which I never was. So I had to appeal that in Tennessee, then go back to Virginia and show them that Tennessee's paperwork was wrong. And then they spent the next 6 months refusing to order a new home study.
Who refused to order a new home study?
Not only the social worker, the GAL, and the judge.
Did they ever tell you why they were refusing to order a new home study?
Well, when I presented it in court, and this was in the JDR court, they accused me of forging the document right there in court, and then dismissed it and said that they were going to have another hearing on it. And then they denied my petition. So I got a lawyer after that, and then he went in there, because we had to put it in circuit court at that point. I had to appeal.
And how did the appeal go?
Well, this is the bad thing right here, is now CPS didn't want to do another home study, but my lawyer actually just kind of talked to the judge and went, what does it hurt? What does it hurt to do this? Well, he did. He ordered it, and they had rescheduled so many court dates in COVID. We put down to parental termination of rights the same day as the hearing. So I had 60 days, and then the social worker put in for a 16-4 home study, which is a full-on home study, a 6-month home study. Well, they knew they did on purpose. They didn't do it expedited, even though I had one under 2. And they did it purposely because they knew it wouldn't come back. They really liked the foster parents and the social worker. They're friends on Facebook. They're liking each other's photos. They're, I was pushed out,
Let me ask you something there, Carla. Have you ever heard of an attorney by the name of Connie, and I believe her last name is Rugili, something like that, there in Tennessee? She's a big advocate, a big-time attorney fighting CPS in Tennessee.
I never heard that. Mm-mm.
Okay. After the show, I'm going to get her name and her contact information. I'm going to give it to Georgette, and Georgette is going to give you that information. And I would like you to call or contact Connie, tell her that you met me, and tell her that you need help in Tennessee. She's right there in Tennessee. She's a very good attorney in these CPS cases, and she's very politically active at the state and federal level regarding
Hmm.
laws concerning, um, this CPS stuff. So I definitely want you to contact her. We're gonna talk some more, Carla, but I wanted to answer one of the questions. Aaron Carranza, the moderator for another one of our Facebook groups, Reunification and Motivation, says, "What is a home study?" Good question. A home study is where a social worker comes out to your home and basically interviews you, checks out your home, checks out your background to see if you are qualified to take care of these children. Now, it sounds like that Carla's case was a little bit extra layer of complication, and that was she was in a different state. So if you have a case in Tennessee, and if you live in West Virginia or Virginia,
Hmm.
there has to be something ordered called an ICPC, the Interstate Compact for the Placement of Children. In California, the ICPC is located in the Family Code. I'm not sure where it's located in all of the other states. But look, the ICPC is an agreement among all states that says basically if you have a relative, well, one of the things that it says is that if you have a relative caretaker like Carla, who wants kids placed with her from another state in front of CPS or that have a CPS case, we will do a study for we'll do a study for Tennessee so that Virginia will know what's going on with Carla, or vice versa. I forget how that happened, Carla. But anyway,
Hmm.
that's the ICPC. So here's a trick that is always used. Sometimes they order ICPCs knowing that they're going to take a long time, right? And then Carla,
Hmm.
people like Carla, the grandmother, are aced out. So one of the things you always want to do is you always want to order what's called an expedited ICPC. That only takes 30 days by law. They have to give you a decision in 30 days. But if you order a regular ICPC, it could take months, 4 or 5, 6 months before something comes back and, it's either approved or disapproved. Now, I want to tell you an interesting story. This actually happened out here in the California area. I won't mention the county that it happened in, but it was travesty of justice. There was this woman who was from the Midwest. I think she was from like Oklahoma or someplace like that. She came out to California with a guy. And when they got out to California in this particular county, it's kind of a resort county. They got involved in drugs. She got pregnant. She had a baby, and her sister and her sister's husband flew out, and I guess it was from Oklahoma, to California to attend the very first hearing. The very first hearing, not later on in the case, the very first hearing, told the judge, "Hey, judge, we want to take this child. This is our family." And the husband was the principal of the local high school, and he was a pastor at the local like Baptist church. The wife was actually a very successful businesswoman. She had a very thriving business, and she was active in the church as well. So basically, people that can take care of the kid, no problem, nothing. Well, the judge apparently ordered the child placed there or investigated, and CPS decided that they needed an ICPC. They did that on their own. They submitted the paperwork, and apparently the judge signed it, and so the ICPC was off and running. It took months, and then on top of that, when the ICPC came back and it said approved, the social worker left it on her desk and didn't address it for 2 or 3 months. By this time, they're moving to the termination hearing of the parental rights. And California and I think your states, once you terminate the parental rights, the grandmas aren't the grandmas anymore. right? They're not even related to the child. And, the foster parents were a model couple. They were good people. There was nothing wrong with them. I think the foster father was a carpenter in a local union, and his wife was, a stay-at-home mom. And, they had no criminal background. They seemed very, very nice people. But what happened was the social worker wanted to keep the case. This is my theory. The social worker wanted to keep the case in California, in that county. Now, there are those conspiracy theorists like myself who believe that one of the reasons why this is done is not because so much the foster parents are great for the kid and have had the kid, but the money follows all that federal money, that $80 billion pot, that follows the child. So if the child was going to go back to Oklahoma, guess where the money was going to go? To Oklahoma, not to California and not to this particular county. So that was my conspiracy theory. Because there was no other reason. I mean, the relatives from back in the Midwest were perfect, right? Couldn't dream up of a better family. So they at the very end hired me to file a 388 petition and try to get the children placed with them. They came to me and they said, hey, what can we do? So I came up with a strategy that included a 388, a de facto motion, a bunch of stuff, and I filed it. Now, the judge, to her credit, didn't have to give me a hearing, but she did. She gave me a hearing, and we had a trial. The problem was at the trial, the social worker's attorney and the minor's attorney showed that this kid had a relationship with the foster parents. Now, whenever you or I take care of a kid, a baby especially, that baby's going to bond to me. I offer it, I give it food, I give it comfort, I give it love, I give it emotional support. I teach the baby how to walk. That baby becomes bonded to you. And the judge ruled that it would be detrimental to take the child out of the foster parent's home, especially when we were about to terminate the parental rights and the relatives weren't going to be relatives anymore. So the judge reasoned, the judge actually found that the social worker had made a mistake. And although there was no evidence at that period of time, if it was some type of civil rights suits, I think we would have had a good chance of showing that that wasn't a mistake. That was intentional, what that social worker did. That's just my opinion. I'm a conspiracy theorist with these CPS cases. But anyway, so my client went back to Oklahoma without the child, and the child was adopted by the foster parents. Now, I suggested to my clients that you have a great civil rights case. And they were so disheartened and so upset. And they were folks from Oklahoma. They weren't from LA. They weren't going to sue people. I mean, that's not their thing. If people do you wrong, we pray to God and we move on. If you're from LA, you file a lawsuit, right? So they didn't want to even file a lawsuit, even though it was my opinion that had a great lawsuit against this particular county and the social workers. So SHIT like that happens a lot. And here you are from Tennessee and what did you say, Virginia or West Virginia?
Virginia.
Yeah, from Virginia, and the same thing is happening. So these aren't accidents. These are in my mind, they're planned. For lack of a better word, I would call it a conspiracy. A conspiracy to take this child and place this child with foster parents, and not give the child with relatives. By the way, I'm aware of a case. I'm going to tell you this case, and I want you to think about this, Carla. Let me tell you the end, and then I'm going to tell you the story.
Okay.
The end of the story is a mother and a grandmother who lost the child through adoption filed a complaint with the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. That's where all the regulations and the money comes from to run these CPS courts all over the country. And they filed a civil rights complaint with the Justice Department in their local area. And they ended up getting the child back. And I'm going to tell you what happened. This mother, I actually read the decision by the Department of Health and Human Services, and it was quite interesting. This mother allegedly had mental or emotional conditions where she was, quote unquote, slow. All right. But she lived with the grandmother who was completely normal. And there was contradictory evidence about whether the mother could take care of the child or not take care of the child. Social worker said, yeah, she can't take care of the child safely. Other professionals, therapists and such, said, oh, you know, she might have a little handicap, but she can take care of this child safely. Well, this is what happened. They go through the process and they refuse to place the child with the grandmother because the mother lives there. Now, the mother had never injured this child, and there was never any evidence that she would injure this child, but it was all, hey, it's a risk to the child. Yeah. And then what happens eventually, since they're not placing it with the grandmother, there were apparently no other relatives or nephrons to take the child, and the child stopped it out. Well, someone informed this lady, the mother and the grandmother, to file these 2 federal administrative complaints. Now, you probably don't know this, but when these cases are investigated these days, because there's so many complaints, the federal agencies, they combine their investigation together, and they came out with, I want to say, a 30-page report that basically reviewed everything that the social worker did and found that the social worker made a lot of mistakes. All right. For me, that was a euphemism. You know, the social worker had discriminated against this lady and her handicap. Remember, in this country, we protect people with handicaps. There's all kinds of federal laws. I mean, when you go to the juvenile court, the state court system, they kind of like ignore that. I made an argument a few weeks ago, a constitutional notice argument, and I got rebuked by the judge. A little slap on the hand. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Constitution does apply, right? But I didn't say that. But I'm thinking that. Right. So they came out with the report, and they basically said, okay, you know, you violated this lady's rights, and as a punishment, you're not going to get federal funding. Ooh. Guess what the county did? They went out, got the child, returned the child to the grandmother and the mother, right? And then the foster parents sued them, right? Sued the county. Yeah. From what I understand, I wasn't involved in the case, but from what I understand, I think this particular county settled and just wanted to put the whole thing behind them, right? So what I'm going to advise you to do, Miss Carla Nelson, is to find those websites, and I'll give them to Georgette, and Georgette can give them to you. But find those websites and file your complaints. From listening to your story, I can tell that you've done a lot of research and you know a lot about what happened to you.
Well, there's also, like the GAL had lied in court, and the social worker was witness to it. And I mean, I finished that home study in 60 days, and he was so mad. I just didn't get the signature from Tennessee, the final Nashville signature that completes it all within that time frame. But I finished a 6 month and 60 days because I was determined. But it's just too late when it's too late.
Right. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's not over. You still have those remedies, and they may find out that something was done wrong or, gross negligence, and they may, tell the county or tell that state, hey, you know what, you got to give that kid to the grandma. Because, I'm from California, but the federal regulations from which all of these laws for every state are derived, and it's true in California, we want kids to be placed with relatives.
Yeah.
Right? That because the Supreme Court of the United States has said that the family is the fabric of our society.
Right. Absolutely.
The family is the fabric of our society. Well, if that's true, why do these relatives have such a hard time?
Right.
It's like pulling teeth. And by the way, I don't know what the law is in your state, but in California, you don't have to be what they call RFA approved. In other words, a judge can order, or even the social worker can recommend, that you get the child pending your official approval. All right?
Huh.
So I don't know, a lot of relatives call me up and say, hey, I told the social worker I wanted the child, and they put me through this process. It's going to take weeks or months. Why can't I just have the child and, and get approved later? A lot of judges, I've seen this from my own eyes, have asked social workers and social workers' attorney is, why can't we just do an emergency placement? Right? I'm looking at the grandma. She doesn't look like she's a mass murderer or a pedophile or a child abuser. Some of these grandmothers that come for me, they're foster parents. Some of them, are retired, social workers, ex-law enforcement. Like, what could possibly be wrong? One of the other conspiracies that I hear a lot, never had any proof, I want to say that right now, never had any proof of this, is that sometimes foster parents may be the friend of the social worker.
They are friends on Facebook.
And I was consulting with someone in Northern California about this, and it turns out how does it go? The social worker is the niece of the foster mother.
It's true.
And I'm thinking, well, there's something wrong with that one. There's kind of a conflict. In Los Angeles County and most counties, if, there's a way to get the county off of the case. And I think it's even in the code. I remember reading it in the code in California, because these cases actually are not county cases. They're actually state cases, and it's designated to the counties to, prosecute or, process. So in certain cases, you can get the Attorney General's office involved, have them come down, have them bring their own state social workers. Now, I know some states don't give it to the counties. They do it themselves. And I think Arizona is one of those states. They don't divide these up into counties. They do it themselves. I know, as a matter of fact, I'm involved in a case in Oregon right now, and Oregon is state run. It's not county run. And, when I have to deal sometimes with the attorneys, I have to deal with them, in the capital of Oregon, not in the county that I'm in, which is a small kind of rural but resort area. So I'm dealing with state people, not county people. But everyone that's watching and listening, listen, I want to tell you something right now. Do not assume that the social worker is going to do the right thing. Now, don't get me wrong. They do the right thing a lot of times. So all you social workers out there that are secretly watching this, I'm not saying you do the wrong thing all the time. It's just that it happens too frequently for me. It happens, people don't call me unless there's a problem. You understand? I'm just one guy in Southern California. Do you know I get 400 to 500 calls a month from people about CPS cases, and at least 45 to 50% of those are relatives who are trying to get the kid out of foster home. Mr. Davis, I'm the uncle, and they won't give me the kid. The kid's in foster care. Mr. Davis, I'm the grandmother, and they won't give me my grandchild. I mean, it baffles me. And then sometimes you go to court, and it seems like, we're getting resistance there. And I don't know if it's really people being concerned that, well, we're concerned about the kid.
Yeah.
I guess I could see that in some cases, but not in all of these cases, especially where the law in California, it's actually codified and put in the statute, Section 309 of the Welfare and Institutions Code. These people are supposed to be putting these kids with relatives as soon as possible, not making them wait like they do on these RFAs. But, maybe there is some genuine concern. I don't know. It just seems odd to me. I tell people this all the time. I was raised by my grandparents, by my father's parents. So I kind of have a soft spot, for these relatives who are seeking to get these children placed with them. So, Georgette and I were talking about this, about helping relatives. Hence, this page was established. Relatives fighting CPS.
Yep.
It's an unusual thing. Like, why should relatives be fighting? Don't they just give us the kids? No, they don't, unfortunately. So if you're a relative out there and you're trying to get a child or children who are in foster care, in a non-relative foster care, do not sit back and wait for the social worker to do the right thing. The social worker might end up doing the right thing. Or you're going to be like Carla Nelson, and you're going to be aced out of your grandchild or grandchildren. How many, was it 1 or 2 children, Carla?
It's 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, and they're split up in 2 separate foster homes.
And you would have taken all 4 together?
Yep.
Right. So now here we're gonna have siblings split up for the rest of their lives. They're gonna lose not only each other, but they're gonna lose the connection they have, the blood connection, the real connection to, their grandmother.
Yep.
I want to ask you something, Carla. When these kids were small, did you ever take care of them or raise them or anything like that?
Well, I lived with them for about 6 months, all but the baby, because she was new to the picture a couple of years ago. But other than that, my son uses them like a pawn, So I just kind of didn't see him for a couple of years.
But at some point, you did take care of them?
Yep, absolutely. For about 6 months straight, I lived with them.
Well, that gives you, at least if you were in California, a little edge in being concerned about the child. In some cases, you can file something called well, if you were here in California, maybe your state has it, maybe they don't. You can file a petition to be declared a presumed parent. In other words, that would give you the same equal status as the parents. But you're the grandmother. Well, in California, you're in California, you're allowed to have more than 2 parents.
Oh.
You only have 2. Yeah. So you can have like 3 or 4 parents in one case. Judges hate to. I think judges hate to see that because, and unless in very extreme cases, because when you start getting all of these people involved in the case and everybody's got a lawyer, things get crazy. It's bad enough. You got the attorney for the social worker, you got the attorney for the children, you got the attorney for the mother, the attorney for the father. That's 4 minimum in most cases.
Right.
Now, if you start adding grandma in, and cousin Elmer, The thing is, everybody's got their own agenda, right?
Right.
Their own agenda. You know, Georgette, you had some questions you wanted to ask me.
Yes.
Go ahead and ask me.
Does a CPS social worker or investigator can they refuse the grandparents' rights for the children just because they have a criminal record from 27 years ago, past criminal record or um, past CPS case years ago that was closed and unfounded or
Right. Well, let me answer that. And the answer, unfortunately, is it depends. Now, and it also depends on who you or who I represent, right? But let's assume that I'm representing the grandparent with this 27-year-old history. You can get what's called a waiver of a lot of old convictions, so it won't be counted against you. But that's a decision usually made by the social worker. Now, I always tell people, hey, if the social worker tells you something and you don't like it or makes a decision, you got to go see the judge, right? You got to go see the judge. You got to make that motion, file that petition so that you can go see the judge and let the judge make the final decision, not the social worker. You know, a lot of people tell me, oh, the social worker told me blah, 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 so I gave up and I walked away. No, don't do that. File a petition, file that motion, go see the judge, and let the judge make the decision. But so, you know, and it also depends what the conviction was for. You know, was the conviction for because the person was a rapist, a child abuser, you know, or did he steal, some steaks from Ralph's Grocery Market when he was hungry, 27 years ago? So it just depends. You know, was he caught with, 100 pounds of cocaine, or was he arrested, for smoking marijuana, which is now legal in a lot of states, including California. Is it legal there in Tennessee?
Nope, but I think Virginia maybe is.
It is in Virginia.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I have
Then
some.
now it's
But every state is a little different. California went to the medical use marijuana for a few
right,
years, and then they went, they went for the recreational,
right,
right?
right.
So I don't know where Virginia stands, but there was something in the news recently about federal enforcement of marijuana, and some federal official was saying, you know what, this is getting ridiculous because more and more states are passing some type of legalization statute on marijuana. So,
Yeah.
Georgia, it just depends on what that, what that conviction was for. Now, 27 years ago, smoking marijuana was a big effing deal, right? But we're 27 years later, life has changed in many ways. And now, at least in California, it's legal. So it's like, no big deal. All right, so what's your next question?
parents to do a drug test. I can't hear you, Vincent.
Technology. All right, I say the question over again because I had you on mute.
Oh, okay. Well, social workers oftentimes force grandparents to do drug tests. We're talking about every week. And I had a case where grandmother called and she said, I've never done drugs. My husband never done drugs, but they want us to do drug testing every week. And then after they've done drug testing for 6 months straight, they still refuse to give them the children, even though it's negative every time.
So I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question is, can they force them to do a drug test?
Let's talk about California because that's where I'm licensed. It's a gray area. I would argue, depending on the stage of the case, that the social worker's power to make them drug tests increases and decreases depending on the stage of the case. Now, in my humble opinion, the social worker can't make you do anything. They're not judges. They can't make orders, right? I had a guy call me today and ask me, no case has been started, but he says, the social worker is requiring me to drug test. Do I have to do it? No, you don't have to do anything for the social worker. Social worker can't make you take a drug test. Now, if you don't take it, or if you take it and you fail it, believe me, it's going to be used against you. I'm in the middle of a trial right now in Southern California where the social worker said they had to take a drug test, and they refused. And now they're trying to use that refusal against them about whether they should get the children back or not. And there's some in my opinion, conflicting laws in California about that. But the answer is no, I don't think the social worker can make them. Can the judge make them as a condition for keeping the children? Yes. And I have seen that done in cases where, there's, pretty good evidence that, grandma may be using some type of illegal drug, or maybe, using alcohol to an excess. Because remember, these judges, they're responsible for these kids. If something happens to this kid, guess who we're going to blame? They're not going to blame Davis. They're going to blame the judge. And they're probably going to sue the social worker. I hate to admit, well, I won't even say this. So, sometimes you're going to have to do that drug test. Now, whether you have to or not, that's a whole nother issue, right? So I hope that answers your question. Carla, if you think of any questions you want to ask me, go ahead. And while she's thinking, Georgette, why don't you ask me another question?
An adult sister is not considered for placement for her two young siblings because she was in the system before, meaning she was in foster care before she became an adult. She has two little siblings, ages 6 and 8, and she wanted to have placement with her. She's a registered nurse. She has a great job, made something of her life. She's great, but social worker told her no because she was in a foster home. I mean, she was in foster care before. So that's why they denied her placement. They literally told her that. So the question is, can they do that? Can they deny placement because she was in a foster home?
Okay, so the answer is, if you're in California, no. They cannot use the fact that you were a prior foster parent, prior foster child, to not get the siblings placed with you. Now, as a matter of fact, the code in California lists the relatives that have priority in order for placement. A lot of people think, oh, all relatives are equal. It's not true. And one of the named relatives who have priority for placement is the adult sibling. So the adult siblings are fair game in getting their younger siblings placed with them. And I've seen and heard testimony from experts who believe that might be one of the best scenarios there is, other than with the parent. There's a special, they believe there's a special bond between siblings, both emotional, psychological, and physical bond, especially where the siblings were raised together, right? Sometimes I've even heard someone testify, an expert testify, that the sibling relationship was even stronger and more important than the parental-child relationship. Now, I kind of questioned that in my mind, but that's what the guy said, right? But the fact that he said it means, hey, we need to be looking at these sibling relationships before we just willy-nilly cut them apart. Now, Carla, I know that you said that there were 4 children and they're each in a different foster home,
Yeah,
or 2 groups of 4 children, those children. And that's bad, under this science about
right.
sibling relationship. That's really bad, especially
Yeah,
if they were being raised together before the intervention of the social worker and the CPS court.
right.
I don't know how old your grandchildren are, but I know in California, if you're 12 or older, you can stop the termination of rights. You can stop the adoption.
Well,
Or
here's the problem. Here's the problem with that is they're claiming that they said they don't want to live with me because what they did is they won't let me do a visit, and they're saying that I'm the mother's mother, not the father's mother, but the mother's mother who was very abusive to them. And so the GAL goes into court and says, "Oh, the kids have said we don't want to stay with her. We are not going with her." And I cannot prove it to them that I'm not that person. Like they just say, "Oh, that you're her," but I'm that's not me. You know, they've they've done everything they could. They even had the mother cornered in the bathroom, and the social worker told her if she didn't sign her rights over, she'd never see the kids, and that if she did, she might get visits. I mean, all around it's been dirty.
they forced her to sign her rights away.
Yep,
Yep.
You
cornered her in
know,
the
uh,
bathroom.
In the bathroom.
Now I'm sure the mother and the social worker will have different versions of that story, but
Probably.
but I hear it a lot. Do you hear that a lot, Georgia? Hold on, let me unmute you. Do you hear that a lot about people trying to or being forced to sign their rights away?
Yes, every day. And they actually threaten them. Some social workers threaten them and harass them. They follow them. I have a one of your clients actually has video of social workers following her, threatening her, and the
Mm.
judge would not permit that video in court.
Oh,
Yep, they do.
It causes me or gives me great pause because it is an unfortunate thing that these things are happening to people. And sometimes, I get the feeling from, some people in the system that they don't believe this happens,
right,
right?
right.
Hold on a second.
Mhm.
Technical difficulties here. All right, there we go. Just the little things. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, where were we? Georgette, ask me another question, please.
Can a social worker refuse a relative, just an aunt, placement because the aunt has 3 bedroom apartment and uh, the social worker considers that that's not good enough because she has a 3 bedroom apartment, um, actually in Los Angeles, California, as a matter of fact. And the social worker told her no, she needs to get a house to have her niece and nephew. I can't hear you.
Is there something wrong with the 3 bedroom apartment? I mean, are there people living in the 3 bedrooms?
Yeah, nothing is wrong with it. She actually showed me pictures. She sent me some pictures of their units, and it's very clean, beautiful. The social worker is not big enough. With her one
But are
daughter,
people,
yeah, I'm sorry. She has
but
one daughter
in the,
and she's a nephew. Okay, go ahead, Vincent. Sorry.
let me mute you. My question is, Georgette, my question is, who lives in those 3 bedrooms?
Her and her husband and one daughter.
Okay, so her and her husband live in 1 bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter lives in 1 bedroom.
Right.
So we got 1 bedroom free.
Right.
How many kids are there?
2.
Are they boy and girl, boy, girl, girl?
Boy and girl.
Okay. So this is what can happen. The boy can get his own room, and the girl could go live with the sister, the cousin, in the 2nd bedroom. And that's should be, in my opinion, humble opinion, that's more than enough space. Now, this is the classic example of where a social worker tells you something, in my opinion, that's just wrong. You know, it's not even a gray area to me. It's just wrong. But let's consider it was a gray area. You need to go talk to the judge, and you need to have the judge make that final decision.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do I do, Mr. Davis, to talk to the judge? Well, depending on the state you're in, you're going to file, something akin to what's called a 388 petition or a motion for placement. You're going to try to talk to an attorney to try to help you. All right? Because you might, you're probably a civilian and you don't want to screw this up. You want to get it right at the right time. But listen, I've always had the impression, and a lot of people, don't agree with me about this, but I get the impression that most judges are fair. They try to be fair. But here's the thing. They don't have the law or evidence sometimes to give you what you want. And that really becomes a problem. A lot of people think, I'm just going to go to court and the judge is going to do what's right. I talked to somebody yesterday. Oh, I'm not worried about some legal strategy, Mr. Davis. Judge will do what's right.
Right.
No, that's not true. You got to have the law and the facts to back you up. And if you show up in court and thinking that with no law, no facts, guess what? You get no kid.
Right.
Now, I hate to tell you that, all right? But that's how our justice system works. We have a justice system, a judicial system. And, it's governed by facts, laws, and appellate cases. It's not governed by, oh, this feels good, I look good, I'm a retired policeman, the judge is going to give me the kid. That's not true. Does it ever happen? Yeah, I've seen it happen.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say it happens once in 1,000 times. Are you going to be that lucky person? What about the other 999 times? They're just SOL. And they're going to leave the court, and they're going to think there's corruption. They're going to think that people are unfair, but they just didn't have the evidence. I was shooting a video the other day about evidence, and it reminded me of a story. This guy came into my office on Saturday morning. This is many years ago. And he says, Mr. Davis, I need you to represent me in a custody and visitation case. I said, oh, okay. I said, what's the current order? He says, well, I get custody. I get visitation 1 Saturday a week from 9 to 5. I said, no overnights? He said, nope. I said, how old is that order? He looked at me and said, 24 hours. I go, what? You went to court yesterday? He goes, I went to court yesterday and I lost. I said, why did you go without an attorney? He says, because I thought the judge was going to do the right thing. And he held up a bunch of papers. They were letters from school teachers and counselors and medical records and all this stuff. He says to me, the judge was corrupt. He wouldn't look at my evidence. Then we proceeded to have, an hour talk about California Evidence Code. See, he went to court not knowing the rules of evidence. And then when the judge ruled against him, he claimed corruption. It wasn't corruption. It was he didn't know what the rules of evidence were. You know, I invented this thing that I call the triangle of success in courts. At the bottom of the triangle, the foundation is the facts, the story of the case. You can't convince a trier of fact like a judge or jury unless you have a story, a compelling story on your side. But the other two pillars in the triangle were the law, right? The Welfare and Institutions Code in the appellate cases that interpret it, and on the other side, evidence. You know, evidence is a very complex thing. You could probably read the evidence code in a week, maybe less. It'll take you a lifetime to master. All right. So you got to know, you got to have these things. You got to know these things. Don't just walk up into court thinking, oh, the social worker will do the right thing. Look, social workers have their own agendas. I hate to tell you that. Right. And it probably, well, I won't say probably, it may not be the same agenda as you. Now, Carla has unfortunately found this out with her 4 grandchildren.
Yeah.
Social workers have their own agendas. And it could be many, many, many things. It could be the belief, mistaken or not mistaken, that the foster parents on the other side are better for the kids than Carla. I mean, I would just disagree with that. And I don't know Carla. So how can you tell me that family is, you know, takes second place behind the foster parent? Right. How is that possible? Right. That's not even the law. So don't show up without the triangle for success, because you will be surprised. Carla, did you think of a question you wanted to ask me?
Well, is there any disciplinary action against the GAL for lying? He came to the house a couple of times, and my attorney wasn't around, and checked out the bedrooms I had, and then went back to the social worker and said, they're in the basement, they have no heat, no lights, no electric, and they're not even in a basement. And we built them, we put 10 grand into the rooms for the kids. You know, he just lied, and I have proof of that from the other social worker that called her and said, wait a minute, I was out there, I seen these rooms, and I know that they're good. So,
well, the GAL, you know, the GAL is considered different things in different states.
Yeah.
In your state, is the GAL the attorney for the children?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Because in California they call it minors counsel, and there is a separate GAL.
Oh.
Okay, and it's not, you know, necessarily the attorney for the child, but in your state it was the attorney for the child. So if someone who is an attorney has lied purposely in court, and you can prove that, theoretically you can file a complaint with the bar in that state. Theoretically you could sue them, you know, for I don't know if it's malpractice because they represented the kids, not you, but you know, falsifying information in a court proceeding. You know, there must be some law in your state. Although I was involved a few years ago in a case in Tennessee, tangentially, a civil case, and it didn't seem that it was a friendly state for plaintiffs. In other words, you know, suing people that are, you know, they were like down on lawsuits against, especially businesses, right? So it wasn't like California, you just, you know, go for it. But so yeah, there are things that you can do. And by the way, one of the things that you can do is you can report that person to DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services. You can report that person to, in your complaint, to what? The Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division.
Yeah, I already made the complaint to the bar.
Okay.
You know,
but that's that's not the only thing that you can do.
Good. I need to know, because I will do it.
All right. So, I don't know how, are you an internet person?
Oh, yeah.
So when Georgette sends you this information, you're going to go and you're going to look at it and you're going to, go. I think you'll be very pleased that there are other outlets for people to complain about.
Good.
Right.
Good.
Right. Georgette, did you have another question for me?
Yes. Can social workers force grandparents not to talk to their adult kids if they have placement of their grandkids? Can they force them not to even call them to speak to them until the kids are 18 years old?
Okay. I have actually seen and heard that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my opinion as a licensed attorney just in California that the social worker can't do that. Now, can a judge do it? That's a different thing. There might be some wild, crazy scenario where a judge might rule that. But I've heard social workers say stuff like that, or stuff like to the mom, unless you get divorced from the father, we're not giving you the kids back. Well, it's
Yep.
it's called family reunification services. How are you going to make
Right.
people get divorced?
Right.
Yep.
Right? Now, should they get divorced? I don't know. But juvenile court is not about whether people should be getting divorced or not. There's always rehabilitation that's offered. That's why they have something called family reunification services. All right?
Mm-hmm.
So the answer to that question is a social worker cannot say you can't talk to the parent. Now, they might say you can't talk to the parent while the children are around, right? Because of safety reasons or emotional or psychological reasons. But if the children aren't around, you have, well, here's this constitutional thing. Davis keeps bringing up the Constitution. Your freedom of speech, right? All right.
There is no
Carla,
such thing as freedom of speech when it comes to CPS, Vincent. There is no such thing. It doesn't even exist.
well, I'm here to tell you that the United States Constitution applies to all governmental agencies, including CPS. Now, when they violate your rights, here's the big question. If and when they violate your rights, what are you going to do about it? I ask people all the time, they call and complain. And I say, well, what are you going to do about it? Basically, nothing. Because to do anything takes time, effort, and sometimes money. I was talking to someone on one of these social media platforms about this very issue, complaining about the corruption. And I said, well, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. How about vote?
Yeah.
My vote doesn't mean anything. Why don't you get 100,000 people together and you guys vote somebody out of office or vote to change laws? A lot of states, including California, have this referendum, the proposition, you can you can change laws by, vote passing a proposition. Now, is that easy to do? No. But you can do something. You can at least try. Right? All right, we're running out of time tonight. Carla, did you have any other questions for me?
Well, I appreciate you helping me. I do have one more question is, if I go back to court, if I somehow get a motion to open that case or even go in for adoption, since I've made a claim to the bar about this GAL, can he be removed from the case?
Well, not only can he be removed, but you and your attorney might be able to make a motion to set aside the termination based upon fraudulent evidence or misrepresentation.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
A judge, at least in California, can't make decisions based upon fraudulent evidence. And if it comes to his or her attention that certain evidence was fraudulent presented to him or her by some attorney or some party, there might be grounds for the judge to reconsider what has happened.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, because I mean, my son's termination probably would have happened anyway, but I think if he did that in my case, he did it in his case too. You know, they completely denied the fact that treatment centers weren't open during COVID, and the services he should have been getting, he wasn't getting because of COVID.
Right. Yeah, that pandemic really screwed a lot of people up.
Yep.
And I've seen in so many counties, at least in California, how social workers have used that to their advantage in not returning children to parents.
Yep.
And I understand that there's been, there's several appeals up considering that. And I talked to a couple of people in California who are thinking about or on the verge of bringing lawsuits against the system for what happened during COVID. Because at one point, they stopped all visitation.
Right.
And then at the beginning, that you couldn't even do your services because everybody was at home. There was no, nobody. They hadn't gotten the online thing up and running.
Right.
And I heard a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard a story that some judge wouldn't even accept online like parenting classes or domestic violence classes or something like that during COVID. Now, I don't know if that was true. I find that hard to believe because I think there were some rules contrary to that. But that's what people are saying, But people say all kind of stuff on the internet.
Right.
Crazy attorney named Vince Davis who says these crazy things on the internet too. Listen, before we go, I want to tell everyone, number one, tomorrow night at 7 p.m., there is going to be a Facebook Live. It's a new group we're starting, and it's about civil rights actions against social workers. All right? It's not about relatives getting kids. It's not about family reunification services. It's not going to be about how to beat CPS in the juvenile or CPS court. It's going to be about focusing on suing social workers in states or counties in a federal court trying to get compensation for the wrong that may have been done to you in a case. Okay? So that first show is scheduled tomorrow night at 7 p.m. And I think it's going to be as part of my radio show, The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win, or part of my my law firm, Law Offices of Vincent W. Davis Facebook page. But hopefully you'll get it out there, and you can go to my YouTube channel. It will be live on my YouTube channel, Vincent. I think it's Vincent W. Davis Trial Lawyer, and I see a lot of people tonight are watching us on YouTube instead of watching us on one of the Facebook platforms. Also, I want to remind you, every Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific time, The Secret, How to Fight Child Protective Services and Win on KABC Radio in Los Angeles, 790 on the AM dial, 790 Talk Radio, and it's live streamed worldwide. So even in your state, if you're in California and not in Southern California, at KABC.com. KABC.com. You can listen, you can call in, you can share your story, ask your questions. All right, I want to thank everybody on the different platforms, YouTube and Facebook, for joining us tonight. I want to thank especially Carla Nelson, grandmother, fighting to try to get her grandchildren placed with her. Thank you, Carla. I want to thank our mother, Miss Georgette Truman.
You forgot my name.
Who's this lady?
Who's this girl?
I had to look down at your name tag. Georgette Truman for helping us. She'll be giving me, plenty of shit about that for forgetting her name. All right, folks, thank you for listening, and I hope you see you next time on the internet. Good night.
Good night. Bye, Carla.